What if the janitor's daughter stopped $1 billion fraud with just one sentence? She wasn't supposed to be in the boardroom. She wasn't even supposed to speak. But when 16-year-old Emma Carter saw something no one else did, she risked everything to stop a disaster hidden in fine print. Her words froze a CEO's pen, exposed a conspiracy, and set off a chain reaction that would bring down powerful elites. But the deeper she dug, the more dangerous it became. And someone wanted her silenced. Stay with us, because the most powerful voice in the story didn't come from the top floor. Sir, if you sign that, your company takes the fall. Silence clamped down on the 41st floor boardroom of Langston Capital like a vacuum. Suits stilled, pens froze mid-signature. 16-year-old Emma Carter, a white teenage girl with storm-gray eyes and freckles dusted across her cheeks, stood at the glass door in a faded hoodie and borrowed sneakers. Her visitor maintenance badge swayed slightly over her chest, catching the harsh overhead light. The words she'd just spoken cut through millions in tailored silence. Richard Langston, the CEO, sat frozen at the head of the conference table. His hand hovered above the dotted line of a multi-billion-dollar merger. His silver hair gleamed under the chandelier. To his left, his elegant wife Vanessa Langston blinked, jaw tightening around the stem of her crystal flute. Across the table, Logan Pierce, the polished Texan in a navy suit worth more than Emma's annual family income, chuckled with fake amusement. "I'm sorry, did the janitor's kid just interrupt my deal?" Emma didn't blink. "Page 17, subsection C," she said evenly. "The clause flips all merger-related liabilities onto Langston Capital. If anything goes wrong, lawsuits, investigations, bankruptcy. Your firm gets left holding the bag." Pierce Global walks away clean. A few junior executives started flipping through the thick packet in front of them. One frowned. Another tapped frantically on a tablet. "She's not even supposed to be in here," someone whispered. "She's just maintenance." But Richard Langston's eyes never left Emma. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice a low hum of suspicion and curiosity. "Yes, sir," Emma said. "I read it 3 times. The language is meant to confuse, but it's a trap." Vanessa snapped Richard. "You're seriously considering this nonsense?" "She's 16. She mops floors. She probably doesn't even understand what she read." But Richard flipped to page 17 anyway. His brow furrowed. The room worth millions in polished walnut and steel held its breath. 12 hours earlier, Emma had been mopping hallway floors alongside her mom, Linda Carter, in the quiet dark of Langston Capital's upper levels. It was their routine scrub sweep. Don't make noise, don't ask questions, just get the job done and leave. But that night, something had changed. A folder stamped final draft merger agreement sat open in the copier tray. No one around, just the hum of machines and distant elevator dings. Emma didn't mean to look. She had to. She wasn't like other girls her age. While her classmates obsessed over parties and prom dresses, Emma read policy handbooks and watched documentaries about Enron with her grandpa. She once wrote an extra credit paper titled The Collapse of Lehman Brothers, a case study in blind trust. And now here it was in her hands, a merger contract filled with legal language and veiled implications. And one clause that didn't sit right. She read it, then again, buried deep in subsection C. A tiny adjustment in wording reversed the entire liability chain. If the deal went south, Langston Capital would absorb all the damage. Pierce Global, by contrast, would remain spotless and profitable. Emma's heart pounded. "Mom," she'd whispered in the hallway. "Have you ever seen a contract that gives away a whole company?" Her mother barely looked up from scrubbing the glass wall. "Emma, don't mess with their stuff. You want us fired?" Emma had fallen quiet, but her mind didn't. Now back in the boardroom, Richard read the clause himself, and something in his jaw tightened. Pierce leaned forward, cool as ever. "Richard, are we really letting a child with a mop derail $1 billion deal?" Emma's cheeks burned, but her voice didn't tremble. "If he signs that paper, your company's name ends up on every lawsuit, every regulatory investigation, every criminal charge." Vanessa hissed to security. "Now," but Richard raised a hand, stopping the guards. He looked back at the paper, then back at Emma. "You said it was disguised," he asked. She nodded. "It's buried in legal terms. Looks normal, but it shifts the entire risk onto you." Vanessa stood, voice icy. "This is madness. She's a janitor's daughter, not a lawyer." Richard said nothing. He just stared at the page. Then slowly, he put down his pen. "Escort her out," he said quietly. Gently. Emma stood tall as the guards let her out. She didn't resist, But just before the door clicked behind her, she turned and met Richard's eyes one last time. And for a flicker of a second, he didn't see a cleaning girl. He saw the person who just saved his company. The next morning, Emma sat in the cold lobby security office, her backpack on her lap. She'd been waiting over an hour. No one said a word. No one looked at her. Across from her, her mother sat stiffly, lips pressed into a hard line. "I'm sorry," Emma whispered. "You should be," Linda said flatly. "I clean those floors to feed us. Not so you can storm into boardrooms like you're the CEO. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Mom, I read something dangerous." Linda exhaled. "I raised you to be strong, Emma. Not foolish." Before Emma could reply, a woman in heels walked in with a clipboard. "Mrs. Carter," she said without looking up. "You've been placed on leave pending internal review." Linda stood silent, gripping her daughter's arm. Outside, the cold Manhattan wind bit at their cheeks as they stepped into the street. Emma looked back at the towering glass building she used to clean. Now she wasn't even allowed inside. 30 floors up, Richard sat alone in his office, the unsigned contract in front of him like a ticking bomb. He turned to page 17 again. She was right. The language was elegant, evasive, and lethal. He opened his laptop, pulling up previous deals. Pierce Global had made. Patterns emerged. Offshore accounts, ghost companies, false fronts. And then his phone buzzed. It was Vanessa. "You didn't sign it, did you?" she asked too quickly. "No," he said. "You're being paranoid," she continued. "We vetted Logan's firm. This is nothing." Richard didn't respond. "She's a teenager," Vanessa added, her tone sharpened. "The janitor's daughter. Are you really doubting me because of her?" He didn't reply. Later that night, back home in their small apartment, Emma sat on the floor, a cold mug of cocoa untouched beside her. Her mom scrolled job listings in silence. Emma's laptop pinged. An email. No sender, no subject. "You saw it too. Edward Miles." Emma's breath caught. She clicked. Inside was just one sentence. "I used to work there. I know what you saw. If you're willing to talk, I'm listening." Her heart raced. Her fingers hovered over the keys. And then she began to type. That night, while most of New York slept behind glass towers and drawn curtains, Emma Carter sat awake in a room too small for the size of the storm now rising inside her. The glow of her laptop painted her pale face in soft blue light. Her hands hovered above the keyboard fingers, trembling, breath shallow. The email from Edward Miles was still open. No signature, no details, just a question. "You saw it too." She replied with one sentence. "I saw the clause subsection C." His answer came 2 minutes later. "It's not the first time." Attached was a file encrypted and a note. "If I go silent, trust no one." Emma stared at the screen. Her heart beat fast. She entered the password he gave her. Her eyes widened. It wasn't just Langston Capital. There had been others. 3 companies, 3 different CEOs, 3 merger contracts, each collapsed 6 months after signing. Each had contained the same legal clause buried in the same paragraph in the same style of wording. Each had been signed without suspicion, and each had destroyed everything those companies had built. And in every single case, Logan Pierce had walked away untouched. Richer, cleaner, invisible, and behind the legal curtains, always one familiar signature in digital ink. Vanessa Langston. Emma's mouth went dry. Vanessa hadn't just been blind to the risk. She'd helped write it. The room suddenly felt smaller. She closed the laptop slowly, hands clammy. Her mother was asleep on the pull-out couch, unaware of the fire her daughter was sitting in. Emma reached for the old blanket draped over her legs curled into the corner and whispered to herself, "I was right." The next morning, Richard Langston didn't speak to anyone. Not his assistants, not his wife. He stared out the towering windows of his penthouse office, the city alive below him. And for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profits. He was thinking about how close he'd come to losing everything. He pored over the contract again. He cross-referenced it with other deals. Then with internal memos, then board meeting minutes. It was there. The pattern, the corruption, and it was happening under his roof. Vanessa walked in just after noon, heels clicking confidently across the marble floor. "You didn't come home last night," she said, setting down a paper bag. "I brought lunch." Richard didn't move. "Where's the flash drive?" She paused. "What flash drive?" "The one Logan gave you at the bar." Her smile didn't falter, but her fingers twitched. "Are you following me?" "I watched you laugh with him," he said, voice cold. "I watched you touch his hand like you'd done it before. And then I saw him give you something. Vanessa tilted her head, the charm gone from her expression. You're letting that girl turn you against me. Richard turned slowly. That girl just saved my company. That night, Emma received a flash drive in the mail. No note, no envelope, just the drive. She plugged it in, breath held. Inside were audio recordings, crackling but clear. Vanessa's voice. He won't question it. Not if I push at the right time. Logan's voice followed smooth, amused. And if he does, we remind him what he has to lose. Emma covered her mouth. Her stomach twisted. She had to tell someone. The next day, she returned to Langston Capital. Security was tighter. Her name wasn't on the list. She waited outside for nearly an hour in the cold before someone from night shift, someone who used to share vending machine snacks with her, walked by. He paused, looked around, then whispered, "Mr. Langston said, if you ever came back, take you straight up." When the elevator opened, Richard was waiting. He didn't smile, but he held the door open for her. They sat in his private conference room. No assistants, no lawyers, just Emma, her flash drive, and a CEO who looked 10 years older than the week before. She laid it all out. The files, the patterns, the hidden clauses, the shell companies, and finally the audio. Richard listened in silence. When it ended, he leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and said, "She's been building this with him for years." Emma nodded, voice low. "And they're not going to stop." Richard turned to her. "We need help." She pulled a card from her backpack. "There's someone, a former prosecutor, Rachel Green. She believes me." 3 hours later, Rachel Green sat across from them, flipping through the documents like a surgeon examining scans before a risky operation. "This isn't just fraud," she said. "It's strategic corporate dismantling, organized theft, and it's been covered up for a long time." She glanced at Emma. "And you're the one who saw it first." Emma's voice didn't tremble. "So, what do we do?" Rachel smiled just faintly. "We build a case before they erase us." That night, Logan Pierce met Vanessa Langston in a private lounge at the Waldorf Astoria. The lights were dim. The air was expensive. They spoke in hushed tones, but their eyes never stopped moving. "He's starting to dig," Vanessa whispered. Logan sipped his drink slowly. "Then we bury him before he reaches the roots." Across the street, hidden on a city bus with tinted windows, Emma Carter pointed her phone camera at the hotel window. The shutter clicked. Then again, she wasn't going home tonight. She was going to follow them because the war had started. And this time, the janitor's daughter wasn't just watching the building. She was tearing down the lies inside it. If you were in Emma's place, just 16, knowing the truth could destroy billionaires. Would you keep going, or would you walk away before it's too late? Rain drizzled over Manhattan the morning the courtroom filled. The heavy oak doors of courtroom 19B groaned as they opened, letting in a sea of reporters, legal staff, and a jury that had no idea what kind of storm was about to land in their laps. At the front sat Richard Langston, polished suit, no tie, eyes tired but resolute. To his right, Rachel Green organized folders like a conductor preparing for war. 2 rows back, Emma Carter sat still in her seat, white blouse, hair tied in a neat braid, face pale but focused. She gripped a notebook in her lap. No makeup, no distractions, just truth. Across the aisle, Logan Pierce leaned back casually, flashing a confident smile at the press. Beside him, Vanessa Langston wore a steel gray suit, face unreadable, fingers clasped too tightly in her lap. She hadn't looked at Richard once. When the judge called the court to order, it began not with drama, but with numbers. Rachel Green walked the jury through forged financial statements, offshore accounts, and merger contracts with language engineered to confuse. Then she played the audio. The jury leaned forward. "If he questions it, we remind him what he has to lose." The room stiffened. Then came the moment that shifted everything. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Emma Carter to the stand." She stood slowly. People whispered. Some recognized her. Some stared like she didn't belong. But Emma didn't waver. She raised her right hand, took the oath, and sat down. "Miss Carter," Rachel began gently, "how did you first become involved in this?" Emma's voice was steady. "I was helping my mom clean on the 41st floor. I found a document left in a copy tray. It was labeled Final Draft Merger Agreement. I read it." "You read the whole thing?" the judge asked, surprised. "I read until I understood enough to know something was wrong," Emma said. "There was a clause that shifted legal liability onto Mr. Langston's company. I knew it wasn't right." Rachel leaned forward. "And why did you speak up?" Emma glanced toward Vanessa, then back to the jury. Because just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt. Silence rippled like thunder. One juror swallowed visibly. Another scribbled something fast. On cross-examination, Logan's attorney tried to rattle her. Miss Carter, are you trained in corporate law? No, sir. Do you have a financial degree? No, sir. Then how can you possibly claim you understood the implications of a merger clause? Because I'm not stupid, Emma said calmly. And because when someone writes a trap, you don't need to be a lawyer to smell it. The courtroom shifted, a quiet murmur. Even the judge seemed slightly taken back. Later, Richard Langston took the stand. Rachel asked him a single question. Why did you listen to her? He looked at Emma. Because no one else saw it. Not my board, not my legal team, not even me. But she did. And when she did, she told the truth. Vanessa Langston was called last. She walked slowly, gracefully, and sat down with perfect posture. When the audio played of her voice, her expression cracked barely. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. Rachel asked, why did you do it? I thought I could push the deal through, she said, blinking quickly. I didn't think anyone would notice. And when someone did, Rachel asked. Vanessa hesitated. I wanted her out. I didn't want the truth to come out because I knew it would all collapse. Outside, reporters waited. Inside, the courtroom held its breath as the judge called for deliberation. The verdict came the next morning on the charge of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. Guilty. On falsifying financial documents, guilty. On tampering with legal contracts, guilty. Vanessa closed her eyes. Logan's smile vanished. They were sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 7. Rachel folded her notes calmly. Emma sat frozen, then slowly exhaled. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Some people held signs that read, "We believe Emma, in truth has no age." Reporters swarmed as Emma stepped out with her mother at her side. Microphones surged toward her. Emma, how does it feel to bring down billionaires? Do you feel like a hero? She paused, looked straight into the nearest camera. I just told the truth, that's all. A week later, Richard Langston stood in the Langston Capitol atrium in front of a banner, the Maya Williams Fellowship for Vision and Integrity. He stepped up to the mic. This fellowship is named after the girl who reminded us that courage isn't found in titles, it's found in action. Emma Carter didn't save a company, she saved its soul. Applause roared. Emma stood beside him in a fitted blazer, the slightest smile on her lips. That night, in the quiet of her apartment, Emma looked out at the New York skyline. The city didn't know her name last month. Now she was in the headlines and hashtags and whispers across every major firm. But she didn't care about fame. She cared that someone finally listened. And somewhere across town in a cell without glass or luxury, Vanessa replayed the trial in her head over and over. And one sentence haunted her most. Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt. Now it's your turn. What do you think of Emma's story? Did she inspire you? Would you have done the same in her place? If you believe the truth always finds a way, comment 100 below and tell us what country are you watching from. Don't forget to share this story with someone who needs a reminder that courage has no age, and the smallest voice can shake the tallest tower.